A young girl curiously dashed into a room, with a middle-aged woman following closely behind, expressing her concern. By her side, a middle-aged man entered the room, his eyes flickering with a peculiar light. An invisible force spread, instantly enveloping the entire room and building. After a moment, the glow in the man's eyes faded, and he remarked, "It's clean. No surveillance or tracking devices." His wife coaxed the little girl onto the bed, commenting on her husband's excessive caution. Shaking his head, the middle-aged man said, "Being cautious is never a bad idea, especially when his wife and his daughter is with him." The middle-aged man spoke in a deep voice, cautioning his wife that they were currently fleeing for their lives. Moreover, the person chasing them was a renowned psychic master, a formidable third-level psychic practitioner. He was known for his narrow-mindedness and relentless pursuit of vengeance for any wrongdoing, no matter how small. Hoping that they would successfully elude his pursuit this time, they believed that as long as they hid in the Bullhead village for a year or so, they should be safe. However, if by any chance he managed to track them down, the combined strength of the middle-aged man and the woman's father, both second-level psychic practitioners, might not necessarily result in their defeat. The woman let out a sigh, expressing her hope that it would turn out that way. It had been a long time since she had seen her father, and she wondered about his current well-being. The woman's father was a peak second-level psychic practitioner. The man's gaze softened, and he took a step forward, gently embracing the woman while whispering reassuringly, "Your father is highly skilled in martial arts. He might have even reached the third level by now. I'm sure he's in good health." The man made a heartfelt vow that he would never let any harm come to his wife and daughter. The woman nodded, and gently leaned against the middle-aged man's chest, feeling a slight sense of reassurance. Not far away, the little girl, dressed in a red dress, stood on the bed, gazing out of the window. Lu Sheng entered the accommodation arranged for him by the travel agency. He also released his psychic power, which was far stronger than that of the middle-aged man. He not only covered the entire building but also inspected all the surrounding structures, including passers-by. Aside from someone hiding in the distance and observing from the bushes, there was nothing unusual. Lu Sheng tidied up a bit, and then sat on the bed, taking out a small glass vial from his pocket. Inside the glass vial were a dozen small black pills. Lu Sheng poured out one pill and swallowed it. He felt the supplement moving through his body, transforming into a surge of heat flowing through his limbs and bones. Feeling his blood energy level increase, and the progress of refining his bones with the immortal golden body technique advancing, Lu Sheng wore a satisfied smile on his face. He knew that in less than 2 months, he would be able to complete the first stage of the immortal golden body cultivation, officially becoming a 4th-level martial artist. Just then, his phone started vibrating. As usual, it was his parents calling to remind him to be careful while being away, to dress appropriately for the weather, and to avoid eating anything that could upset his stomach. In their eyes, despite being a 3rd-level martial artist, he still seemed like a child. His mischievous younger sister jokingly mentioned that Lu Sheng had gone out to play on his own, and her senior Yang had returned to school, hinting at wanting to hang out with Lu Sheng. His sister sent a playful emoji and asked if they were dating. Lu Sheng quickly replied on his phone, advising his sister to focus on her martial arts training, reminding her to take the supplements he provided her every day. He responded with a warning emoji, urging her to mind her own business. Lu Sheng set his phone aside and lay down on the bed, entering the dream realm. After days of simultaneous training, his body was enveloped in a golden light infused with the will of a Grand Master. No zombie could breach his defense. Suddenly, he noticed the appearance of another Grand Master-level zombie on the street, a female Grand Master. Clad in battle armor befitting a knight, wielding a shattered long spear, her figure was both symmetrical and perfect, resembling a mythical goddess of war. As Lu Sheng approached within 100 meters of the female Grand Master, she sensed his presence. In an instant, her figure vanished from his line of sight. When he tried to release his spiritual power to perceive her presence, he finally sensed her figure. However, by that time, the female Grand Master had already closed in to within 5 meters of him. In an instant, Lu Sheng found himself surrounded by numerous red exclamation marks, accompanied by an urgent and piercing alarm. Before Lu Sheng could react, the female Grand Master swiftly took him down with a single spear strike. Just before dying, Lu Sheng saw a magnificent and majestic glacier. As if waking up from a nightmare, Lu Sheng felt his heart racing and a splitting headache. He was startled awake, his body in intense pain, as if it had been torn apart. This was his first experience of death within the dream realm, and it felt overwhelming and powerful. Lu Sheng was deeply shaken. Until now, his exploration in the dream realm had been relatively smooth. However, he was completely defenseless against the female Grand Master. The previous smooth progress had made him somewhat complacent, but the dream realm was not his personal paradise. Lu Sheng had a profound realization. His state of mind returned to its original calmness, and the negative effects brought about by his inflated strength over the past 3 months dissipated in that moment. The immense power of the female Grand Master was undeniable, surpassing Shi Shengning in battle. She must be a Grand Master level expert stronger than Shi Shengning, possibly even an 8th level Grand Master. Lu Sheng recalled the radiant glacier that appeared with the thrust of her spear, perhaps a manifestation of the technique of the female Grand Master. If he could obtain it. Lu Sheng shook his head, self-deprecatingly dismissing the thought. If he hadn't underestimated the situation and fought at full strength, with his mastery of all of his techniques and newly acquired Grand Master technique, he might have had a chance to contend with the female Grand Master. However, he still wanted to go back and test himself, but no matter what he tried, he couldn't enter the dream realm again. It seemed that the dream realm had entered a cool-down period. Just then, his phone started vibrating. It was a series of messages from Amelia, one after another, flooding in like a stream. Lu Sheng stared at his phone in silence for a few seconds, suddenly regretting adding her as a friend. He quickly turned off his phone without replying. Walking out of the room and heading towards the dining hall, Lu Sheng thought he would be the only one there at this late hour. However, to his surprise, he saw the little girl's family, as well as Amelia and Luna, all seated in the dining hall. As soon as Lu Sheng appeared, he immediately caught the attention of the 2 girls. The little girl and Amelia both stood up, waving to him loudly, completely oblivious to the gazes of others. Lu Sheng waved back, then found a seat nearby and sat down. The seat wasn't far from the little girl's family. The little girl's father smiled at Lu Sheng and nodded slightly. Lu Sheng nodded in response and picked up the menu to order his meal. Amelia pulled Luna, who had a helpless look on her face, and sat down beside Lu Sheng as if they were old friends. Lu Sheng coughed a couple of times and politely asked if they had eaten yet. Both of them responded at the same time. One said they had eaten, while the other said they hadn't. Amelia gave Luna a fierce glare and said with a smile, "I wasn't hungry earlier, but now I'm hungry again." Luna teased her for a bit, but Amelia acted as if Luna didn't exist, and continued talking to Lu Sheng. She began introducing the menu. Meanwhile, the little girl beside them looked eagerly at Lu Sheng's table, and then lifted her head to ask her parents if she could go and have a meal with big brother Lu Sheng. The woman gently touched the little girl's head and said tenderly, "You can still have a good meal here." The little girl insisted, saying that she thinks that the food will taste better sitting next to big brother Lu Sheng. The woman glanced at her husband. The middle-aged man smiled and agreed. Seeing her husband's agreement, the woman couldn't say much and could only admonish, "Behave yourself." Only when she saw the little girl successfully join the table, did the woman's eyes relax slightly. She turned her head and complained to the middle-aged man, asking, "Why did he allow their daughter go to a table with strangers?" The middle-aged man smiled and replied, "It seems like his wife was being overly protective. That young man has a good character and his eyes are pure. He doesn't seem like a bad person. Besides, he's just a high school student. Even if Lu Sheng has trained in martial arts for a few years, his strength wouldn't be very powerful." However, the other 2 individuals were already second-level martial artists. The middle-aged man remained calm, exuding a strong sense of confidence in his words. As long as they were within his line of sight, a single thought from him would be enough to end their lives. Amelia's eyes widened as she looked at the table filled with food that Lu Sheng had ordered, her expression showing some surprise. Lu Sheng handed a cute dessert to the little girl, and the two of them began a competition to see who could eat faster. The little girl responded with a sweet voice and diligently shoveled the food into her mouth. Lu Sheng also ate quickly. Luna glanced at the table full of food, and her gaze towards Lu Sheng lightened a bit. Only those with average family conditions who hadn't become formal martial artists would eat so much in one meal. Once martial artists reached a certain level, those who had the means would typically rely on supplements to meet their daily energy requirements for cultivation. Those without means would choose higher quality ingredients as substitutes. Otherwise, eating so much food in every meal would result in extended trips to the bathroom. Amelia, on the other hand, didn't mind at all that Lu Sheng ate so much. She kept her promise and ate alongside him, even finding him quite handsome while eating. Luna looked at her best friend and asked, "You don't really have feelings for Lu Sheng, do you?" Saying Lu Sheng was younger than both of them, just a high school student, and judging from Lu Sheng's unstable figure and dark circles around his eyes, his martial arts talent and family background are probably not good, even though Lu Sheng has exceptional looks, physique, and demeanor. However, Amelia didn't mind and replied, "Age isn't a problem, they were just 3 or 4 years apart. Besides, it's all about fate." Luna disagreed, saying that they couldn't be together. With Lu Sheng's current situation, after graduation, he would probably only earn a monthly salary of 5 to 6,000, not being able to afford a house or a car. Love isn't just about temporary passion. One must face reality. Amelia's martial arts strength is getting stronger, and the gap between them will only grow over time. Eventually, conflicts will accumulate, and there will come a day when everything explodes. Amelia shook her head. She said she could help guide Lu Sheng in his martial arts journey. Even if he couldn't get into a prestigious martial arts university, she would be willing to travel to see him every week. It didn't matter if he didn't have a car or a house because she did. Even if Lu Sheng could only be an ordinary person, she would be willing to accompany him as an ordinary person. Furthermore, she didn't believe that Lu Sheng was just ordinary. She firmly believed that his future held so much more than that. She couldn't believe her best friend would give up on her decade-long martial arts practice for a high school student. Due to Lu Sheng's martial prowess, Lu Sheng could clearly hear their conversation. He rubbed his head, feeling it was somewhat troublesome, and couldn't help but sigh. The younger girl overheard and asked, "What does troublesome mean?" Lu Sheng thought for a moment and casually replied, "It means praising both of the sisters for being beautiful." The little girl nodded thoughtfully. Suddenly she turned around and loudly pointed at Amelia and Luna, who were walking towards them. She jumped around and said the two sisters are very troublesome. Lu Sheng was taken aback for a moment, then burst into laughter, nodding vigorously. Amelia and Luna looked stunned, unsure of what had just happened. The next day, everyone gathered downstairs as planned. The tourists were not very satisfied with this trip, and one elderly man noticed that a family of 3 was missing. As for when or where they disappeared, no one knew. The young tour guide hurriedly took out her phone and tried calling them, but she couldn't get through. Not only were they missing, but Lu Sheng was also nowhere to be found. The guide immediately contacted the search and rescue team. Amelia and Luna witnessed all of this. How could the 3 of them, who were perfectly fine just moments ago, suddenly vanish? The guide was occupied with the search, and it seemed like the rest of the itinerary would have to be cancelled. They decided to look for Lu Sheng themselves. According to the map, the mithril mine should be located nearby, just a few kilometers away. Lu Sheng swiftly dashed through the forest, leaping to the mountaintop where he released his powerful psychic power. His eyes shimmered with a brilliant light as he calmly surveyed the area before him. He detected the buried minerals beneath the ground, and in the next moment, wherever his gaze fell, the earth and stones shattered, and the ground exploded. It was as if an invisible tornado had swept through, causing terrifying destruction. Lifting a large chunk of soil with his psychic power, Lu Sheng observed as it disintegrated in midair, revealing a glimmer of mineral. After a few seconds, various pieces of silver-like minerals were presented before him. Infusing his psychic energy into them, the toughest steel metal quickly softened, becoming as malleable as dough. Lu Sheng compared the description from the information provided by Snowy, and verified that the silver pieces in his hand were indeed the precious mithril. Lu Sheng knew that crafting weapons with mithril required dozens of steps, and there might not be much left in the end, depending on the purity of the mithril in this mine. He had already used his psychic power to investigate and realized that the mine was too small to yield a substantial amount, making it easy for him to excavate and carry out the ore. However, he soon faced a dilemma: how to transport the mithril out. His initial plan was to use his backpack and carry the mithril in batches, mining a little and transporting it bit by bit until he had enough to craft a set of weapons for psychic masters. Yet, Lu Sheng had overlooked a crucial aspect: greed. Everyone had desires, and he was no exception. Lu Sheng made up his mind and decided to put the mithril back into the large pit he had dug earlier. He covered it up with soil and stones, hiding the existence of the precious metal. The map indicated that there was a small village of a minority community a few kilometers away from his location. Lu Sheng decided to head there to seek help. The villagers of this secluded village were generally known for their sincerity and simplicity. By offering a generous reward, Lu Sheng believed he would be able to find assistance easily. Following the map's directions, he made his way towards the village. Meanwhile, the 2 girls continued their search for Lu Sheng in the forest. They gradually ventured deeper into the wilderness, but Luna suddenly halted their steps. Her eyes were fixated on something within the forest next to the stone path, and there was an inexplicable glimmer in her gaze. Swiftly, Luna darted into the woods beside the road and stopped about a few meters away from the main path. She crouched down and looked closer, which caught Amelia's attention. It was a toy ball, similar to the one a little girl had been playing with earlier. As Amelia moved to pick up the ball, her body seemed to freeze in place. A purple spiderweb suddenly appeared, ensnaring both girls. Just then, a man's voice echoed from ahead of them.